us this evening to share about the department's wildlife programs and resources. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi and start taking notes. Thank you all for being here very much.
Thank you. So I'm just going to really briefly talk about this collaborative that has been able to fund education projects such as this Wildfire Public Forum that we are all attending today, so that you kind of understand how different organizations are working together to help Ventura County as a whole become better prepared for wildfire. He already did a great overview of what the agenda is going to be. We are going to have time at the end for questions and answers and the opportunity for you to go and talk to any presenters with additional follow-up questions that you have at their table. So what is the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative? We are a group of several fire safe councils, which you will learn much more about fire safe councils from Myra later today. And along with your Ventura County Resource Conservation District, we are a special district in the state that serves the majority of Ventura County, as well as we are partnered with the Ventura County Fire Department and Jensen Hughes, which they're helping with some planning projects with like fire risk mapping and things like that. And this whole collaborative, we were funded by CAL FIRE and the California Climate Investments. We were given more than $2 million to work together to try to increase wildfire preparedness in Ventura County. This is our mission. If you want to read it, I'm not going to read it all to you, very long, but it gives you a sense of our commitment and organization and working together to better prepare for wildfires. We have a few projects, and if you have any additional questions about the projects, I do invite you to visit our table afterwards. But project 1 is updating the Ventura County Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Project 2, countywide wildfire community outreach and education campaign. This wildfire public forum, that is part of project 2. Project 3, standardizing home hardening, which you're going to learn more about later. Project 4 and 5 deal with assessment, risk mapping, and really more of that like fine scale mapping in the Ojai Valley, which we hope to, with further grant funds, to expand to other locations in Ventura County. And then project 6 is a California Wildfire Summit that we're going to hold for professionals and people interested in learning more about wildfire. It's going to be held at the Ronald Reagan Library this October. So if you are interested in that, please stop by our booth after the presentations. So that's what we are. We're a group of many different partners working together. And without further ado, I want to welcome Larry Williams. Thank you, Larry.
Hey, well, let's see, it's still afternoon. Welcome. My name is Larry Williams. I'm with the Ventura County Fire Department. I'm currently the manager of our fire hazard reduction program known as FHRP. I'm out of our Fire Prevention Bureau. We're also part of what we're launching as Community Wildfire Preparedness Switching Tactics, because the Defensible Space Program, that annual program, for those of you that get a notice, how many in the room received that annual fire abatement notice? Okay, so you're aware of that program and stuff. But we do a lot more than that in our Fire Prevention Bureau in preparedness. So tonight I'm actually going to be talking about risk, the fire risk and our hazard, because everyone's wondering about that. But we're going to touch on a lot of the other topics briefly, and then the Fire Safe Council is going to get in depth with a couple of those topics there. Just about background for me, I've been with the County Fire Department going on 33 years of permanent service, 11 years as a reserve firefighter, all here in Ventura County. Raised in Simi Valley and just basically lived the east area. So I've experienced a lot of the wildfires that we've had in our county and stuff. So tonight I'm going to talk about our risk, what we've done to help with that risk, our prevention, our outreach, and then some questions. So our fire risk. A lot of you probably remember this slide. Beginning of May 2013, Springs fire on the Camarillo grade, early season fire, burned about 24,000 plus acres all the way to the ocean. That's Camarillo Springs community right there, right at the beginning of the fire. This literally was probably within the first hour of the fire. Well, you probably remember this one, the Thomas Fire, 2017, followed by the Woolsey Fire in 2018. Thomas Fire at that time, well, here we're talking about, people think our risk, okay? We had a huge fire risk up until this winter time. We still have a risk because even though we've had a lot of rain and a lot of areas have got the water, stuff is still green out there, don't be fooled by it. There's still a dead component in those fuel beds. And when the fuels dry out, primarily those fine fuels, what we call the grasses, they burn quickly and they burn rapidly in direction and stuff. So we're probably going to be going from major brush type, heavy fuel fires into a lot of grass fires. A lot of our fuel beds have burned and stuff. But again, you want to be prepared because it doesn't take much to get going later in the years as the fuels dry out more. Again, that dead component could still have ability to carry fire and push the embers into the communities. Large fires in California. I mean, the last 6-7 years have had the largest fires in California history. We've had up until 2003, 3 of the top 10 in Ventura County over the decade, going back to 1932. So our fire risk in Ventura County is big, and the areas will continue to burn over a period of time. The recurrence of fire in the Santa Monica Mountains is about 7 to 8 years. By the time the fuels come up and you have a large fire go through. So we're due in some of these areas to still have more fires. The Thomas Fire, when it burned in 2017, was the largest fire in California history for 11 months. And then it got overtaken by the Camp Fire up in Paradise in 2018, the same day that the Hill and Woolsey fires started down here, which was a big draw for resources and stuff. Thomas Fire is still number 8 on the list. The largest fire now, the Thomas Fire was just under 300,000 acres. The largest fire now in history is over 1 million acres. Tells you how much California has burned over the years. So what have we done to help address that? Some forward thinking from our department is we've actually purchased some of the military access Blackhawks. They're now considered Firehawks, been retrofitted. We have 2 full ones in service that you'll see flying around that got put in service 2021. We have a 3rd ship that we can use that carries what they call a Bambi bucket versus built-in tank. These things carry 1,000 gallons of water versus the 360 gallons of water that our other copters used to carry. So we've increased the amount of water we can put on. They can carry more personnel or crews to get them inserted into the fire area quicker. They have night flying capability. We're one of the few organizations that can fly at night now on fires. There's certain limitations and criteria for it, but again, when the fire, with the weather down, cooler and stuff, the fires usually die down a little bit at night, and it gives us a chance to take advantage of that. Part of that is with Southern California Edison, they have funded some large helicopters in the Southern California area. We're lucky to have one here. It's based out of Camarillo Airport. And then we help support keeping that ship on contract available to us 365 days a year. So we support beyond what Edison's doing already as far as providing 3 heavy helitankers in the Southern California area. We've also added some additional dip sites to where they can go in and get the water with their snorkel because they can fill up within less than a minute. They can fill that tank versus having to land somewhere and have someone come up with the hose and pump water into it. So rapid turnaround for flying those copters. The other thing we've done is we've gotten increased funding from CAL FIRE for our wildland fire crews. We normally would carry 2 crews of 20 persons. They would be short during the off season, then they'd be fully staffed with seasonal people during season. The state's given us additional funding. Part of it is because they've lost a lot of inmate crews. So in order to offset that, they've gone to each of the counties that have these programs and offered additional funding to now support to keep these crews on. So we got the 3rd crew last year. This year, we're getting the 4th crew. So that gives us more capability in county for us for fire response. So what are we doing on prevention efforts? You're going to hear tonight about the fire safe councils. There's actually 5 of those in Ventura County. We're here to help support and work with them, just like we're in a partnership with this collaborative. We help to further educate people on what the hazard is for them so they can then reduce the risk from that hazard. Part of it means maintaining proper defensible space, maintaining their structures, and being prepared ahead of time and not waiting till the fire actually occurs. A lot of people you understand is it's the embers that are taking out the homes. It's not the fire front. It's the embers coming in advance of the fire, landing on the homes, getting in the attics, getting through any crevices, open windows, etc., igniting the material around the house, the vegetation, your personal belongings, trash cans, you name it. That's what's getting the fire to the structures. And so we're trying to hear, part of our effort is to educate people on what it truly means for a defensible space, which starts at your structure and moves out to the 100-foot zone, and what it means to harden your home. Even homes that were built to the newer standards, if you don't maintain them, you're going to be subject to embers potentially getting homes settle over a period of time. So things break. You've got to maintain them properly. And the research behind it, both the scientific research and the post-fire evaluations, show that properly maintaining and hardening that home gives a great percentage of survivability. But when you couple it with your defensible space, your percentage of survivability goes up even more so. It's a team effort for that. Plus, it's advantage of giving an area for our first responders to go to be safe when they are having to do structural defense. So our fire hazard reduction program, we've actually had a defensible space program in this county starting in 1929, the County Board of Supervisors. We've been doing it for over 90 years, 30 feet. We went to 60 feet in 1950. We went to 100 feet in 1991. The state did not start a defensible space regulation law until 1965 at 30 feet. They didn't go to 100-foot till 2006. Our program's been there. It's been tested numerous times and has shown the effectiveness of keeping the numbers of structures that potentially get damaged or destroyed during fire way down. And you think, gee, Thomas Fire, Woolsey Fire, the hundreds of structures that were destroyed in those fires there, when you look at what was in our jurisdiction, was about 250 in the Ventura County jurisdiction. Part of it's because of our program. When you look at the thousands statewide and communities completely burnt out. So it's a really good program. It works. It's been tested numerous times. We send notices to about 800 property owners every April. June 1st deadline. We get over a 99% compliance. Last year, how many people want to take a guess how many parcels we actually had to go on to actually do the abatement because the property owner wouldn't do it? Out of almost 19,000 parcels. More than one. 8 last year. 5 the year before. 3 abandoned parcels of bankruptcy and a foreclosure. Everyone else did their work. Last year we had a couple that decided to not do their work. So the program does it. It's education. People do it because they understand it and stuff. And for those people that don't receive that notice, a lot of people don't know that they're subject to those same laws and regulations when they live in a fire zone. Just because they didn't get a notice, they still have to do the work. We focus on the areas where they're more prone to the wildfire aspect. But when you look at the fire severity zone maps, if you're in those zones, the law says you are supposed to do defensible space. So, like I said, we've been very supportive on that. Here's a good example, another example of a fire. This was out in Westlake in the North Ranch community. This was actually the day after Christmas one year. Fire burned through there because some kids decided to take mom's minivan and take it through off-road into the brush and started on fire. And it burned down to the Westlake High School. No structures destroyed. You can see the advantages of how everything did. What is that defensible space zone? And I keep talking, you hear the 100-foot, but more importantly, you've been hearing lately what's called Zone 0. Defensible space is made up now of 3 zones. Zone 0 is the new zone. It used to be 30 feet and then out to 100. Now it's 0 to 5 feet, that's Zone 0. That's the most critical zone next to the structure. that's going to potentially a higher risk of that structure igniting if you get fire in that zone, because you're right there against the structure. Zone 1 is your 5 to 30, and then zone 2 goes out to the 100-foot. Now, state law says you stop at the property line. Ventura County does not stop at the property line. We go the full 100-foot. We've been doing that since 1931 in our county. We're allowed to, under law, to be more restrictive. The law has now changed to actually written in the law that we can do that, even though the law gave us the ability. But what we do is we don't make you cross onto your neighbor's property. You do your part. Whatever goes over the 100-foot, joining property owner is responsible for maintaining that portion. So if 70 feet's on your property, then the other 30 the neighbor's got to do. And it doesn't matter whether they have a structure or vacant parcel, because it's a two-way street. Structure fires getting in the brush, getting to the community. Brush fires burning up to the community, getting into the structures. And so there's a change at the state level to start really emphasizing that. And hopefully we'll see them changing the law down in the future. But those are your 3 zones, and they go in all directions. So we're also involved in reviewing the state laws and regulations. I sit on multiple state groups with State Fire Marshal's Office, our Fire Prevention Officers Associations. We're involved with the code development. So we're seeing a lot of that. We deal with a lot of the research people, University of California, research folks. The insurance industry's got a research arm that does actual testing and stuff. So we try to stay on top of that so we can see what needs to happen, because we feel it's important to you as our constituents. Our first priority is your life. Second is the property, because overall, we don't want to see people die or get hurt. But if we can limit the property damage and the tertiary effect of the after fire and what it can do to a community, is huge out there. So if we can reduce it down. So I told you about the zone 0. The thing with the zone 0 regs, this came out of state law that was required to do it. We actually implemented it in our county for new construction about a year before the state actually passed a law to require it. Those regulations are under development still at the state level. They're so intense as far as the impact is so great. They're up at the governor's office trying to work them out. They were supposed to be in effect this year for new buildings and next year for existing. It's a mandatory retrofit. No difference when the state went from 30-foot to 100-foot. There was a period of time of retrofitting that defensible space. Those regulations for existing structures, that if you're in these fire zones, only if you're in the fire zones, that they will apply, will probably be sometime in 2025. And that's one of the groups I've been involved with from the beginning. So seeing and hearing the research, the post-fire reviews of it, and making sure that what's out there, we can already carry it forward. We don't want to wait till that gets out. If we know something needs to be corrected, we're working with that now. We're not mandatory going out and telling people you got to do this new zone 0 regulations. Some stuff we've already had in play, like mulch. We don't want mulch within 5 feet of a building because it's readily combustible. But we're not going out and retrofitting. But if you're putting in a new structure, new landscaping, you got to meet that, because we don't want you to put something in today, and in 2 years you got to take it out. Doesn't make sense. Let's put the right stuff in the right place so you can keep it, maintain it, and have the beautification, for your house. This is a big item: fences, combustible fences. A lot of studies been done on that, and post-fire. This is from the Texas area last year. And this was a small field fire that got up to the backyard fences and then started carrying through the fences and igniting the homes. They lost, I think, a dozen homes in this little community because someone was doing their brush clearance on another parcel. The wind just sort of took it over there. And you can see, you look at there and look at the backyard. Look how the backyard, and it's just burning through that ground cover. Or I don't know if that was grass or just, stubble. You look at the shed that's over here, and it gets going eventually. It gets going and it spreads to the house. Those are the pathways of fire that we're trying to break up and stop the fire from getting to the structures, but also the ember impact, the heat and everything going with it. There's some more of the fences. This was part of the testing they did with the insurance industry. Insurance Services for Business and Homes Institute. It's a nonprofit. They're funded a lot of stuff from the insurance industry. They look at all this stuff. Fire is one of them. They do hurricanes, they do hailstones, they do a lot of research to find out what works. They got a roof farm where they have got different types of roofs, and they're just sitting there, aging them with the weather conditions, and then monitoring them after years of how they're maintained, how they're holding up, and they'll take pieces and then go test them in their lab, full scale lab. They have some great Ember videos. Next big item that comes up is the fire hazard severity zone maps. Those are maps that the state put out originally. Everything in what's called the state responsibility area, where CAL FIRE is responsible for wildland fire protection, prevention, suppression. That's in the unincorporated areas, in the wildland areas. And those maps are available on our website. They're available on the state website. If you're in a state responsibility area, you're already in a fire hazard severity zone. There's 3 levels in there. There's moderate, high, very high. If you're in the local areas, which includes portions of the unincorporated and any incorporated city, they only map the very high. So the only very high portions, like example, is up in the Heights. That's up in the state area. Most of that's all in the red zone there. There's a little bit that comes down and hits the city. The other area where it hits, of course, is Camarillo Springs. All of Camarillo Springs is in a very high zone, and a portion up off Upland. So those maps are out. The state areas were last mapped in 2007. The local areas were 2010. The state law changed to where in those local areas, the state fire marshals now required to map the moderate and the high zones in those local areas. So those maps will be coming out possibly the fall. Now we're hearing it may be the beginning of the year, because they're still working on the state map, the state areas zones. They had to remap all those. Including more information on wind modeling, embercast, weather, more finite weather patterns, in the areas and stuff. First, the technology they had in 2007 when they did them, they got a lot more data and information they can use. So for the state areas, public comment period did end in April. We had a meeting in January because each county was supposed to have a public meeting for CAL FIRE to receive comments. It's not our mapping for those state areas. It's the state fire marshal who works under CAL FIRE. They're still reviewing all the comments. We'll probably see some minor adjustments to those maps, and then they'll finally approve those maps. When they do, after that, then we'll see the local area maps come out for us to be able to look at and see what happens there. The only problem with that, well, I won't say problem, when those maps come out from the state for the local areas under a change in state law, that is the minimum zones. We cannot remove anyone from the map. We cannot downgrade their zone. When those maps get issued from the state, that is the minimum. We can add, we can increase. That's out of the change in state law, that once those maps off that model come out, that's what we have to work with. So that process is happening. When that occurs and the local maps come out, there'll definitely be a public comment period. We'll have workshops in all the jurisdictions. Each of this, we serve as the county fire department. We're a fire district. No one contracts. The cities do not contract. Our revenue comes from property tax as the district and from our contract with CAL FIRE to provide the fire protection here versus CAL FIRE doing that. So when these maps come out, we'll have meetings at each of the cities we serve. We serve all the cities except Fillmore, Oxnard, and Ventura City. They each have their own fire departments. The rest of the area, plus all the county, is part of the fire district, known as the county fire department. And then we have to do a public hearings, comments on it. We have to adopt those by ordinance. The thing about the maps are a hazard. They identify where the hazard is. And it's based on a 30 to 50 year projection of those fuels and everything. And there's areas that have never burned. There's areas that get reburned, but those are the projections they're using. The risk part is what can cause what is the damage that can be caused from those fires? And we always hear that question about the insurance companies and stuff, is that, oh, I'm in this zone. I've got, it's going to increase my insurance and stuff. They have their own system for determining. They have their own maps. for determining what their risks are. And unfortunately, as we just heard, sorry, I'm going to step on your toes. As we saw in the news this weekend, State Farm is no longer going to issue new policies in California for fire insurance in the fire zones. There's changes in state insurance regulations that they're going to talk about there. But again, the maps are the hazard. There's other things you can do to reduce the risk for that, and the state's working on some stuff. The other thing I'm going to talk about real quick, because the Fire Safe Council's got to get into it, is Firewise. Just briefly, it's a National Fire Protection Association program nationwide, Firewise USA. With the new insurance regulations, the insurance companies have to take into consideration a community-wide mitigation measures, which include a Firewise recognition. It then could be helping to either retain or discounts for insurance. So that's one of the reasons. One, it's a good thing because you learn about fire, you learn to be prepared for wildfire. But it's one of the 6 items identified in the new insurance regulations that went in effect in April in California that they have to take that account. There's a couple community, the rest are your property level, your home hardening and your defensible space. All those combined that they have to look at when they consider what their rate structure is for insurance in California. So we're going to be fully launching that in conjunction with our fire safe councils. We'll have more information coming up on our website in the next week. We've been working on that presentation, but we are hosting, it's already been set, a community Firewise workshop to really explain the program, talk more in depth. Cal Fire will be here and a PA will be here. Insurance Commissioner's Office will be there. And we're going to have a 4-hour regional workshop. They'll be at the Office of Education on August 17th. Information's on our website, and we just got launched a RSVP there. Just so if you want more information, go in there, you get the email, we'll be able to send you updates on that. It's free, no cost to attend, and close by for here. We're doing that well ahead of the October Wildfire Summit at the Reagan Library. So again, just mention that. We'll have that. Hope you're there. Additional information, ready, set, go. We've got some handouts at the table. You know, our main website, vcfd.org, or you can put in vcfhrp.org, which you go directly to the website of my unit. We've revamped that. We got a lot of information on there available. Again, continue to update and provide the information available to you. With that, any questions? I know there's probably a lot of questions, so I know we want to leave time for the other speakers. We'll take a few, and then if there's, then afterwards, definitely be available. No, we have, so California uses inmates, low risk type inmates. They have a fire crew program. And so they'll come out, they're run with the captain from Cal Fire. They go through a training process, verification process and stuff. And so they're incarcerated. They're inmates. And so with the changes in incarceration of folks in releasing people earlier and stuff, and the COVID thing, is the amount of the persons that they have available to fill that is about 50% of what they allocations that they have to be able to fund. We used to have the Ventura School, which was a youth authority over here, and we had some of those crews available. They moved the youth authority, then they brought in on the fire camp side some of the adult inmates. Those are gone. What you have now is a probationary training program. People have been released going through a training program and stuff. We have them. Plus the California Conservation Corps has got one of the, well, there's only I think 2 or 3 now in the state fire camps too, to where they're trained, and those people, they're paid, they're part of the Corps members. So we have other resources beside our own crews. That was Cal Fire's way of trying to bolster the strength in the state by giving additional crews to the what they call the contract counties. We're 1 of 6. You don't see Cal Fire here. They give us funding equivalent to what it would cost to put Cal Fire here. Same with Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Kern, and Orange County, plus Marin up north. We're 6. We've been the contract county since actually 1903.
And along county roads and the county unappropriated. And it seems this contact, these contractors, they come in and they take off 6 inches of the tree and then the back.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't advocate total tree removal. As far as who's maintaining those trees on the county right of way, that would be a question for the Public Works Agency. There are certain regulations for people who front the property to have to do certain maintenance, but if it's over the roadway, usually that's the Public Works Agency. And when it comes to power poles, there's certain requirements for clearances from power poles. It's too much to get into that, it's a very detailed criteria. Some poles require clearance, some don't, depends on the equipment on there. And I'll let Edison talk about, the stuff that they're doing with that. So, yeah. Yeah.
Are very unusual diagonals and got to so-called defensive space. You might not have enough true to even defend each and every one of those.
You're not going to have an engine company at every single house. You don't have the many in the state. That's what's important. The defensible space and home hardening combined will increase the survivability chances of your structure besides protection of life. It doesn't mean it's not a guarantee that's not going to catch on fire, but it's going to reduce the risk and stuff. So we can, if we can talk afterwards and stuff, because I know there's other presenters that want to, and they wanted me to hold off for any other questions until afterwards. And then you can come back to the table there because I've eaten up my time. So yeah, there'll be general questions at the end. I think we did that the last one that popped up. So, and with that, we have Ventura Regional. Come on down.
Okay, there.
Just right there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mayra de Leon. I am the Communications and Outreach Specialist for the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what our fire councils are in the county, and then a little bit more about those Firewise communities, and then what other programs we offer to Ventura County as a whole. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of the work that we do, we're an independent nonprofit. There are 4 other fire safe councils in Ventura County. Some of them are a little bit smaller because they're very localized. For instance, we have Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council, Bell Canyon, Oak Park, and Ventura Park. We sort of cover the rest of the county. And although every fire safe council acts a little bit independently depending on the needs of its community and the type of funding they've received, we're in collaboration with each other. We try to support each fire safe council in the county, as well as outside of that as well. There are fire safe councils all throughout California, but our group really works to help community members reduce their wildfire risk. And so we do that through, gratefully, through the collaborative with Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, with RCD, with the fire department, as well as the other fire safe councils and local agencies throughout the county. And so just to give you a little bit of an overview, this was a screenshot that I actually took about Camarillo specifically from wildfirerisk.org. I guess the website down there got cut off a little bit. It's ORG at the end. But essentially, and I don't want to this isn't to scare you or anything, but essentially this is just a really useful resource and a website that gathers studies and information about wildfire risk depending on different categories. I mean, of course, we always default to CAL FIRE's fire hazard severity zones, but this is just an interesting screenshot of the information that I got about exposure, risk, wildfire likelihood, and vulnerable populations in the Camarillo area. And I think the biggest thing for us is just reiterating the fact that a lot of people underestimate their risk to wildfire, mostly wildfire. Well, in the couple blocks of space, it would really have to take a couple blocks to get to me. It's not really the front, like Larry said, but it's really what worries us is those embers that are being flown to fire events. And so again, wildfirerisk.org is just it's a good resource to look at that kind of thing. But again, just a little bit of an overview of our Fire Safe Council. Flagship programs include the Home Hardening and Resiliency Program, which is the main project that we are in charge of when it comes to the Wildfire Collaborative. As Heidi mentioned, where we were tasked with standardizing the home hardening process. And what that means is that in Ventura County, the rest of the state is really looking to us and a couple other few fire safe councils or other groups that were tasked with trying to find a way to standardize this home hardening process. And so what we're doing is it's a free program for anybody in Ventura County that lives in these high fire zones, where you make an appointment with us and we will come out to your home and give you a personalized list of actionable items that you can do to lower your wildfire risk. As Larry mentioned, we really want to have people educated so that we are, making an actionable list and checking off as many items as possible before an event happens, so that we have less to worry about if we're ever in, an event of an evacuation, in the event that, we've been put in situations where we'd have to, remember on the fly what it is that we need to do before we actually, go to a shelter or go to other family members. And the other program that we do are chipper days. This is something that through grant funding, we've been able to do in a couple different areas, and we're expanding in Ventura County. But essentially, we try to offer curbside chipper events so that any vegetation that gets done, that gets clipped, your trimmings, essentially, you can bring them out, leave them on your driveway. If you sign up through us and we're having an event on a certain day, then we'll come through. Ventura County Fire actually helps us do the labor on that, and they'll chip away they'll come by with the truck and throw everything in the chipper, and then you can either keep the chips for mulch around the rest of your property, or we can haul that away as well. And then the other part is the Firewise USA workshops. Essentially, we were assigned as the regional coordinator for Ventura County for the Firewise USA program, and so alongside the Ventura County Fire Department, we're trying to start up more Firewise USA recognized communities, and I'll talk about that more in depth in just a second. And then we also have fuels management programs throughout the county. I just finished one in Fillmore and Piru, where we had a funder thanks to the California Fire Foundation and EJ Harrison. Essentially, we were able to remove up to, I think it was 12,000 tons of hazardous palm trees that were posing risks to communities in both Piru and Fillmore, and we were able to get rid of that. And so that's just something that we were trying to get done before, again, that really dry fire season started to happen. So that's an example of stuff that we do. So again, just an overview of the home hardening program. It's super easy for anybody in Ventura County to register for, and I ask that if you live in this county, if you live in Camarillo, please register with us. Essentially, it is a half hour to maybe an hour appointment where you can register on our website pretty easily, make the appointment there. Or we can, if you're here tonight and you don't have your calendar right or your phone on you, you can go to the table at the back and sign up, and then we will give you a call throughout the week, make that appointment. But essentially, one of our team members will come out to your house and we will just walk you around the perimeter of your home. And we really focus on that zone 0, like Williams was talking about. That is the primary area that we're looking at. The studies have shown that that 0 to 5 foot perimeter around your home is the most critical part of the home hardening process and resiliency against wildfire. So we really want to take a look and make those recommendations for you. You don't have to take notes down. We can do that for you, but essentially we'll give you a tool. It's a quick online assessment tool where we'll give you a code, go onto the website and look at that report. You can print it out and then essentially have a list, an action items list that can help you if you are overwhelmed and you say, no, I don't know where to start. It will give you sort of a priority list so that you know what you can do to start hardening your home correctly. And so please register with us. The home hardening assessment, just like I said, it's a home visit. We assess your wildfire risk around your property, and all those recommendations that we provide, we take on like an iPad, and essentially it'll be available in that next 24 hours. And you can, any clarification or questions that you may have, you have our contact info and you can always reach back out to us and we'll try to get those questions answered for you. The report and the educational materials are provided for you, and all of those results are private. Again, so we're an educational component and we have no authoritative, no authoritative control over what happens at your property, but we're just encouraging people to do, what they can to lower their wildfire risk. And so you've seen this from Larry earlier today, but again, just as a quick reminder about that, zone 0 is that 0 to 5 foot zone. Zone 1 is the 5 to 30 foot zone around your house. And then zone 2 is that 30 to 100 foot. When you get into a little bit more populated areas, your property line might not extend all the way out to the 100 foot. Maybe your neighbor is only 15 feet away, right? You have a fence line in the middle, which is all that much more important if you have a wooden fence line that directly attaches to your home. And so that is something that, we'll go through. So as a small preview to what we do on this assessment, when we come out to your home, we're looking for 3 things mainly. Structural weaknesses, what the construction of the home actually looks like, any flammable material that might pose a risk to the home, and then any vegetation and the defensible space feature that Larry was talking about. So this is just an example. When we talk about structural weaknesses, we're really talking about the construction of the home itself. Do you have chipped paint or some of the shingles coming off of the roof? The ventilation systems, 1/4-inch screens are typically standard for a lot of ventilations, whether they're attic gable vents or foundation vents. And we really recommend upgrading that to the 1/8 inch at minimum, possibly 1/16 if you can find that. It's a little bit harder of a screen to find, but the 1/8 inch. Larry was also mentioning the Insurance Institute for Business and Safety, IBHS. They did the study where they had, embers being blown through a house that had 1/4 inch screen and a 1/8 inch screen, and the difference between what could get into each house was just a sizable difference between what could actually enter. So it was a lot easier for the 1/4 inch screen embers to get through. Again, vegetation management, just trying to make some recommendations. It might not look like this, it could just be a rose bush that's like within that 0 to 5 foot zone, but if it's, right up against a single pane window as opposed to a double pane. And, a lot of people ask us questions about plants that might have an emotional attachment to, somebody, planted a tree in memory of somebody that they lost or something like that. And maybe that tree or that plant is a little bit more emotionally connected to that person and they don't really want to get rid of it. Well, it's like there's certain things that you can and can't control. If that's a non-negotiable, what can we do around that to also mitigate that risk? So do you have a single pane window that maybe we can make into a double pane window, and then you hopefully increase your the heat resistance of something like that? Or maybe you can trim the tree just so that it's below the level of the window. We can find some happy mediums there. So this is just a screenshot of what the report summary looks like when we give it to you, when you actually find it on the website. It gives you just sort of what we found depending on your home hardening aspect, and then the defensible space as well. So I remove the homeowner information up at the top, but essentially this is just an example. But essentially we found, you know, 4 potential home hardening improvements that we can make, and then 4 defensible space improvements that we can make. The report itself also gives you wildfire risk meters depending on topography, the home hardening, and the defensible space. I always like to say, so the you know, wildfire behavior triangle is the topography, the climate, and then the fuel. But you can't control the topography and where you live, and you can't control the climate, but you can control the fuel that you give a fire. And so that's what we're trying to use to mitigate that risk. So anyway, again, just this is what the report looks like online. It's just a checklist that maybe gives you some 5 actionable items, like maybe move or store the lumber a little bit further away from the house itself, and maybe updating those vents or trimming the vegetation that is within that zone 0. This just the QR code in case you wanted to scan that and make the appointment, or go straight to our website. It's venturafiresafe.org. You can also get that information at the back table there for us if you wanted to sign up. So the main thing I wanted to talk about as well today is the Firewise USA program, as Larry mentioned earlier. Essentially, this program, like he said, is a good recognition program that helps educate communities on wildfire risk, but also we're trying to expand those because as wildfire is becoming a bigger issue in California, the more prepared we have our communities, the less we're in fear of it, rather than, we want to make sure that we know fire is happening, but are we prepared for that, right? And so these programs are a really great way to do that. The objective of the Firewise USA program is it provides a framework to help a community and the neighbors organize and take action to increase the resilience to wildfire. So in California, there are like 600 communities, Wildfire USA communities. In Ventura County, as of the beginning of this year, there were only 2. But thanks to help from Ventura County Fire Department and then some really dedicated residents, we're now in the process of starting up, I think Max, my colleague, is working on 5 or 6 different sites, including one here in Camarillo. So how many people live in the Santa Clara Valley area of Camarillo? Anybody here? Santa Rosa Valley, I'm so sorry. Great. So if you live and or know anybody that lives in the Santa Rosa Valley, there is a Firewise USA community being started up, and we have Kevin Cannon here. He's on the council to start that up, and we need more participation. So please, if you know anybody that lives in that area, we have contact information. He will be in the back as well there to get more participation from residents. But the benefits of the Firewise USA program, and we're trying, it's a program where, we're not trying to handhold, but we're trying to do the, give a man a fish or teach him to fish, right? So we're trying to teach communities to be self-resilient and being able to create these programs that can keep going. And so, so again, it's learning about wildfire, building a community, and garnering publicity for this program and access to funding opportunities. As a Fire Safe Council, part of our dedication to those Firewise USA communities, we're looking to include Firewise USA communities in the grants that we look for and search for. So we look for these funding opportunities to represent these communities, and then that way we can get more of these projects done. And the insurance discounts, which are definitely the biggest draw for some of the communities, which is always great as well. And so just quick on how we organize a Firewise USA community. We organize, we plan, and we do, right? So we if there is just a dedicated number of residents that are interested in starting a Firewise USA community, we create this committee. And anywhere from a community of Firewise USA, community can include anywhere between 8 and I think 2,500 homes. And so we will work with you to get all the paperwork and documentation started. And so we work with Ventura County Fire, the elected officials in the city manager's office to get a risk assessment done. And that's the next step, which is plan. So we have to plan to get a wildfire risk assessment for the site or for the community. And then we have the board and the community use that risk assessment to develop a 3-year action plan for where they want to see that community as far as, prioritizing the needs of that community against wildfire. It's gonna go, I'm like running out of time already, but so the next step in actually, when we form that community, we get that wildfire risk assessment. We have actionable items that we need the community to do. And so it's not super extensive. It's pretty attainable. And we help try to facilitate these. So, hosting an outreach event and working with the neighbors on addressing those action plan items will go towards, there's a certain number of hours per house that we have to get into that application. And so any outreach event, even just coming to this wildfire public forum will count as an hour towards a wildfire mitigation or a wildfire hour that you would do for the Firewise USA community. Community education, the homeowner, the volunteer hours, and then also any gardening that you already do in your home that's already a wildfire resilient task, right? And so you record that, you let us know, we'll record that. There's no minimum of vegetation that can count towards that. And then also any dollar amount that you spend towards retrofitting your home for a wildfire for let's say you had a home assessment that counts, that's 1 hour towards the hours that we need. If you do that assessment with us, and let's say we make some recommendations like switch out your vents from a 1/4 inch to a 1/8 inch screen mesh, the dollar amount that you paid to get that retrofit done, that works towards the hours that are needed for a Firewise USA community as well. And then once all of that documentation is done, we apply through the Firewise USA program. And that's it. And so once that is, I'm going to go back for a second. And then once that is done, the recognition, I know there are signs that you can get for your community. It builds that sort of publicity for the program itself. I'm not sure if you've seen, I know the Tree City USA signs that are usually at the front of certain communities as well. It's sort of similar to that. And so it's a really great program. If you have any questions about it, we're here to answer those. And then again, at the table at the back. Oops, I'm sorry, I went back. Really quick mention about the chipper days. Essentially, these chipper days, we do them in select areas of the county. I think we just did one for Santa Rosa Valley as well. And so as we're doing these more chipper events, we're looking for funders as well currently to try to expand this program. But again, if you have questions about how a chipper event works, all of these resources about how all of our programs work are on our website. And so there's question and answers, FAQs, and then there's we're about to put a video up on that website that shows you how to put the vegetation on your driveway that would make it easier for us to come by with the truck and actually chip those. That is it for my presentation. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop by in the back, but otherwise I'm going to turn it back over to Heidi. And then this is just our contact information if you'd like to reach us. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. Next, we have Luis Lara from SoCal Edison.
Good evening, everyone. So yes, my name is Luis Lara with the Outage Communications team out of the Customer Engagement Division. We've just changed our name, so I'm still trying to get used to it. So if you happen to hear me say business customer, just X on that. It's actually customer engagement now, right? This whole rebranding thing. So today I want to just give you just a very high level overview of some of the public safety power shutoff, what we call PSPS protocols, some of the successes that we've had over the last several years. Now, this is just a very myopic view of the greater presentation that we do deliver. So if you want a more in-depth conversation, that's not a problem. We can definitely come out. And it's only about 800 slides. We can do that together. It's really easy. So today, really just a quick thing, right? Just rip the Band-Aid off and we can just jump into it now. Okay, so since 2018, or since the PSPS protocol actually really took off, we've been able to identify that through the deployment of different technologies, everything from just fast-acting refuses, just how we do business, we've been able to successfully eliminate approximately 65 to 70% of the risk associated with catastrophic wildfires associated with our electrical equipment. So that's a huge win, not just for Edison, but for us as a whole as a community. Of course, there's more that can be done, and we are continuing to work on in that space. Now, one low-hanging fruit that we've also identified is the installation of covered conductor. So when you're driving down the street and you see those wires, it's actually bare wire that you see, connecting the pole to pole. So in those high fire risk areas, if we can eliminate or remove that bare wire and replace it with a covered conductor, in other words, the same wire with a thick plastic sleeve over it, it'll significantly reduce the likelihood of a potential ignition point in the field. And I'll get a little more detail in the next slide on this particular aspect. Also, through the deployment of the different technologies, we've been able to identify that for those customers, those circuits that have been impacted the most because of leveraging a PSPS event or proactive de-energizing event, we've been able to reduce the minutes of interruption by a PSPS event by approximately 73%. So that's another significant win for our customers, right? So in the past, where you were de-energized for extremely long times, we've been able to reduce that number of minutes of interruption, and we're going to continue moving forward with that. Along with that, we've been able to identify approximately 81,000 customers that have been permanently removed from ever coming under PSPS scope. Again, that's 81,000 customers. That's a lot of customers. Again, we want to continue to grow that number and in fact, eliminate a big portion of our customer base in high fire risk areas that should be impacted. Now, just give you a couple of talking points on what we're doing on our end, right? Everything within our area of responsibility. However, there are things that we can do outside of our four walls. So to that end, Edison has worked with local fire agencies, and we've been able to contribute approximately $18 million for the creation of a quick reactionary force. And what this is, it's a group or team of multiple helicopters that can perform nighttime operations during those instances where there are live fire events in our service territory. Starting this year in 2023, our contribution to this reactionary force will be year-round, not just a one-time contribution, but it'll be a regular now partnership. Now, the next couple of slides are going to be a little busy, but I'm going to highlight just a couple of things for you. Now, I did mention the covered conductor. So one thing that we have identified in our high fire risk areas, or HFRAs, is that these areas are actually really wind corridors. So every year the winds do come through, and when the winds do come through, there's a potential for those power lines to slap together. When they slap together and we have dry vegetation nearby, the winds, well, now we have a recipe for disaster. So replacing all of that bare wire with covered conductor, again, will significantly reduce the likelihood of a potential ignition point in the field. Now, along with that, as many of our customers in these wind corridors also experience power interruptions that are not necessarily tied to a proactive de-energizing event, but because we have dry vegetation or just vegetation blowing around. We had a few interruptions recently where there was those kind of canopies that people have in the backyard, for a picnic. Gust of wind came up, picked it up, and made contact with the overhead equipment, took down thousands of customers. So when those winds do come through, if we have that covered conductor with a thick plastic sleeve over it, again, it'll again reduce the likelihood of an interruption now caused not just by a proactive event, but also any flying debris in the field. Now, another thing I do want to highlight for you is underground, because I get this question quite a bit. Is, hey, Edison, all right, guys, I see you guys are telling me all this stuff. Why not put everything underground? Right? It only makes sense, guys. Come on, knuckleheads. So we did have a goal last year to install approximately 17 miles of undergrounding of our high fire risk area circuits. We did not meet 17 miles. We actually undergrounded 19 miles of circuit. Okay. As of today, we've undergrounded a total of about 7,400 circuit miles of high fire risk area circuits, which translates to approximately 43% of our high fire risk area circuits already underground. We are in the midst of developing an additional plans for more circuitry to go underground in these high fire risk areas in the next coming years. So you'll hear more information from me in the next couple of months or next year maybe on what we're doing in this space and how much we've gained and how much more ground we've gained in this space. Again, another busy slide. Just want to highlight a couple of things for you. So weather stations. So today we've deployed over 1,600 weather stations. We're looking to amp this up to about 1,800 weather stations in the next 2-3 years. And many of our customers, I've had one customer ask me, why do you care about weather stations? One thing many of our customers may not know is that we actually have our own in-house meteorology team. And their primary goal is to find out or identify where the potential impacts coming into specific areas that may de-energize or impact power flow to our customer base. It could not necessarily be tied to a strong wind event. It could be significant rain. It could be rainstorms, a potential avalanche like we had in the Bishop sector that took down a lot of transmission lines. So our meteorology team is constantly monitoring what are the conditions in the field and whether we should start sounding the alarm to notify our customers or start working with local agencies. Say, hey guys, there's a potential threat. We need to start working together, start sharing information. Another thing I want to share with you is fuel sampling. Again, many of our customers may not know is that we perform this bi-weekly fuel sampling. So every 2 weeks, we have a couple of folks that go out and they'll test what are the conditions of the fuel in the different high fire risk areas. What is the fuel moisture content, right? Is it dry? Is it cut back? Is it growing significantly? With the recent rains that we've had in February, we already expect that there's going to be more than average growth of vegetation throughout our service territory. So again, for us, it's a way for us to keep an eye on it. How is that vegetation growth affecting or may influence, the summer months coming up when all that starts to dry up. Right, so we're continuously monitoring that. We actually do have about over 160 wildfire mitigation cameras. So we're part of this team where we're able to leverage these cameras in those remote locations, right, where it's easier to have eyes and not have actually a person in some remote location. We're able to pan, tilt, and zoom with these cameras to a specific location or potential threat. And more importantly, we're able to share this information, this data with different agencies. Hey guys, this is what we're seeing. Is this what you're seeing? We have lines here, we don't have lines here, or hey, you know what? Fire agency so-and-so needs you to de-energize this circuit line in this canyon because we have crews there, et cetera, et cetera. So it helps us to triangulate and better work with our different agencies. Again, another very, very busy slide. I want to highlight 2 things for you. And I know this came up in a question a little while ago from one of our young ladies, vegetation management. Vegetation management for Edison within the wildfire mitigation plan has actually been a cornerstone of this program. Every year we inspect approximately 1.9 million trees. We prune back about another 700,000 trees in high fire risk areas. This is a very, very big program for us. So let me just give a little commercial here for you guys. If you guys are driving down the road and you see a tree or palm tree that's growing in power lines, or maybe you're not sure if it's a power line or if it's a telecom line or whatever it is, call Edison, please, and let us know. Hey guys, I see this corner of Main and First. Can you send a crew out here just to inspect, just to double check? And if there's something that you guys can do something about, trim it back, whatever you can do. Now with vegetation, we used to have an approximate 4-foot clearance of vegetation and our electrical assets. We've now grown that from 4 feet to 12 feet. Again, with the whole point of extending or growing that defensible space between our electrical assets and vegetation. And again, with the whole intent of reducing the likelihood of a potential ignition point in the field associated with our electrical assets. Now, our public safety power shutoff protocol, or PSPS. We have seen some significant gains in this space with the deployment of multiple technologies and the more technologies that will continue to be deployed in the future. However, we cannot completely rule out the leveraging or use of PSPS. This is where we proactively shut off power to our customers because there's some potential issue, okay? During the recent storm events that we had throughout our service territory, we did notice that the grid is significantly more resilient. So we expect that trend to continue, okay? However, I would love to tell you right now, hey guys, we're never gonna shut it off ever again. But if I do, you're gonna beat me up. And if we do, shut it off, okay? So let me just tell you right off the bat, at this point, we cannot completely rule it off, but just to be completely honest with you right now, okay? Naturally, we're gonna continue working in this space because we do wanna eliminate the risk and associated with any fires associated with our equipment. And of course, our whole intent is to preserve the integrity and the safety of our communities that we serve and live in. So for me, I live in a high fire risk area. So it's important for me that, hey, okay, let's do what we can to make sure that my family's safe. Okay. See, I told you, this is a simple, short presentation. If you want the bulkier one, you let me know, okay? But I want to thank you for your time and your patience. I'll be around, so if you have any questions, comments, we just feel like, knocking someone out, I'm your guy today, okay? Thank you much.
Next, we have Army from the Insurance Commissioner's Office.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. I know we've had a number of presentations and I promise to make this short. My name is Armina Sarkisian. I'm an outreach analyst with the Department of Insurance Community Relations and Outreach Branch. We are a state agency and we regulate insurance, all lines of insurance. We protect you as a California consumer when it comes to insurance fraud. We regulate the insurance market. So we make sure that insurance companies do not just raise your insurance rates for no particular reason. They actually goes through a very rigorous process through the Department of Insurance. We set the standards and we license those agents and brokers that you work with. We resolve consumer complaints. So anytime you experience any type of insurance related issue, we are the agency to assist you. We actually can go out there and do investigations. We work with local jurisdictions to bring restitution to you. But one thing that we cannot do as a department is we cannot mandate that an insurance company provide insurance coverage to a particular person or a community. So as I know Larry mentioned with the State Farm issue, we cannot mandate that State Farm provide coverage for Californians. So new homeowners coverage, State Farm is limiting that for the time being, at least. So since 2019, the Department of Insurance has actually changed its tactic, and we actually have now gone out to all the counties in the state of California and meet with wildfire survivors to learn how we can improve their consumer process immediately following wildfire emergencies. And so through those conversations, we have been able to work with the California State Legislature to remove barriers that wildfire survivors face when claiming those benefits that they paid into. We've been able to expand certain evacuation expenses, additional living expenses as well. Additionally, since 2019, consumers now have a one-year moratorium for non-renewals immediately following a wildfire emergency. That was something that we kept hearing from people who were experiencing wildfire emergencies. So now at least you have 1 year guarantee that your insurance company cannot non-renew immediately following that emergency in your area. Additionally, we were able to increase a non-renewal notice you receive from your insurance company from 45 days to 75 days to give you additional time to shop around to find an alternative coverage. Also, I'll mention the FAIR plan because I understand a number of you here in this room actually are on the FAIR plan. Essentially, most of Californians, you get your insurance through the traditional market. However, about 2.5% of Californians have to resort to getting their insurance coverage through the FAIR plan. The FAIR plan is a pool of all insurers that do business in the state of California. They share the risk of insuring those properties in the very high fire severity zones, properties that no other insurance company will insure because of the risk factor. And so since 2019, the department has been working with the FAIR plan to improve the process because we understand that many homeowners who are getting their insurance through the FAIR plan do not have adequate coverage. The FAIR plan is also more expensive than the traditional market. So we've been working on getting the FAIR plan to essentially provide comprehensive coverage. it currently only provides limited coverage to consumers. The FAIR Plan decided to sue the state of California instead of providing comprehensive coverage. So we're currently in the appeals process, but we say that we will not stop until this is a fair plan for everyone. Also, how many of you are part of a homeowners association? Quite a few of you. And so if your homeowners association is in a very high fire severity zone, most likely you've experienced issues finding insurance coverage. And so homeowners associations who are insured through the FAIR Plan also are increasingly facing the issue of not finding coverage. So we actually, about 2 months ago, were able to work with the FAIR Plan to increase the coverage limits under the FAIR Plan to 20 million. For dwelling coverage, it is about 3 million. We held a public informational hearing on the FAIR Plan last year in July. So from those conversations, from the public testimony that we received, we are going to work on making sure that this is a plan that works for all Californians. So I anticipate in the next few months, years, you'll hear more and more improvements to this program, to this coverage. So that brings me to the Safer from Wildfires framework. Many of you may have heard of this, but if you have not, essentially, this is a partnership between the Department of Insurance and all the state agencies that you see on your screen. This was a partnership where we came together and we said, okay, we need to come up with actionable steps for our California consumers to follow to make their communities safer from wildfires, to protect lives, homes, businesses. And in effect, the aim of this framework is to make insurance affordable and also available, because by improving your wildfire risk in your community, then insurance companies will not say, because of the wildfire risk in your community, I'm not going to write coverage. So we're incentivizing the insurance community to insure homes because we're decreasing the wildfire risk. So these are recommendations. This framework, Safer from Wildfires framework, is a list of recommendations that you as a homeowner, for example, can follow to make changes to your individual structure, upgrading, let's say, your windows, your roof, to make them all safer. So it's a list of actionable steps you can take. This is actually a direct, the State Fire Marshal's Office, for example, has put out these recommendations as well. So it's nothing new. We just put it concisely together in this framework. So after tackling your individual structure, next step is protecting your surroundings, your immediate surroundings. And Larry had that graphic of, the shed burning and everything, essentially the fire coming to your home. So making sure that you're clearing your surroundings to make sure that the fire does not reach your house. And then lastly, it is working together as a community. I'm so happy that Fire Safe Council is doing workshops on Firewise USA, because if you are a Firewise USA community, then you do qualify for these insurance discounts. So it is working together as a community, making sure that you are, as a community, taking action to make your community safer. And so with these recommendations, the framework, come the regulations that are now law as of October of last year. So the regulations lower the cost of insurance and increase transparency in 3 ways. First, we are now requiring insurance companies to give discounts to homeowners for home hardening actions. Before these regulations, only about 40% of the insurance market was giving discounts for home hardening. But because of these regulations, now 100% of the insurance market will be mandated to give discounts to you if you take action and harden your home, your community, your surroundings. Those discounts really range anywhere from 5 to 20%. It really depends on your insurance company and how you pay for your insurance. Secondly, we are requiring that the insurance industry gives you your wildfire risk. So you may not be aware, but your insurance company already assigns a wildfire risk score to your property. It just never becomes public. But because of these regulations, you will now receive that wildfire risk score. It's standard across the board for all insurance companies. It's 1 through 10. It's a scale. And there's a number of things that the insurance market takes into consideration by assigning that risk score to you. It may look a little different from insurance company to insurance company in terms of the actual look of that document. So once you receive your wildfire risk score and the reasons why your risk score is at that level, you will be given the right to appeal that risk determination. If you've actually done the work to harden your home, if you have proof, you'll be able to appeal it. And so in effect, you should be given discounts if you've actually done the work. It says here that the insurance companies have until April 12th to submit their new rate filings to us. Yes, the regulations are law as of October, however, they needed time to submit the new rates. And as you may imagine, all insurance companies decided to wait until the very last minute. And so imagine it's hundreds and hundreds of applications. So the Department of Insurance is currently going through each rate filing, making sure that it meets all the standards and the guidelines put forth. So it might take a little time for you to see your wildfire risk score, but know that once you are up for a renewal by your insurance company, you could actually already request your wildfire risk score, even though they don't send it to you right now. You could actually call them and ask for your wildfire risk score, and they should be able to give it to you. And you can already start appealing if you do not agree with that risk determination. And so lastly, if you have any questions, and I understand that you all probably do, and most of the time your questions are so directly regarding your individual property, I would advise you that you reach out to the department's hotline. That's 1-800-927-4357. We actually have insurance experts on the line Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We speak multiple languages, and they're ready to hear your individual issue and assist you in the process, guide you, explain to you what your rights are, or if you believe that your insurance company is stealing your money, essentially we can help you file a claim and help you work through that process. Or you could also visit us, insurance.ca.gov. And I do have the Safer from Wildfires framework printed out on my table, so don't hesitate to visit that later on. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, what I'd like to do is we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and also our presenters' time. So why don't we take 10 minutes for Q&A generally, if we could have our speakers come somewhere near the front. And if those of you in the audience have questions, it's good that you want to ask with everyone, then this will be a good time. And then after that 10 minutes, then we'll thank everybody and then encourage everyone to go back to the vendor so you can have your one-on-one conversations. So with that, if there are any questions, now's the time.
Yes.
In terms of pertaining to wildfire risk inspections, so we may look different, but more so there's that coming out to your property that everything's
like we have done with a lot of regional issues and landscaping and issues regarding trees and under transformers and everything. A lot of times the agriculture haven't been serviced like they used to be by fire and stuff. And you have to come up with them to pass it down. So Larry can probably answer, right?
Typically, the fire hydrants are owned by that water purveyor. It is their responsibility to maintain them. during the drought, we sort of backed off from going out and exercising the valves. We don't really try to flow the hydrants because, again, water stuff, but ultimately we still try to do that, maintaining the blue hydrant reflectors. Usually the cities will do that on the public roads. We do it every once in a while, but the water purveyors are responsible for that. Same thing as the big issue is during a wildfire, especially if power's out and stuff. They need to take responsibility to make sure that their system can operate during a wildfire. If it means bringing in generators or already have a generator, most of them have a connection that they can, install one in. But it's ultimately that water company's responsibility to maintain their system. If you're a mutual system, then everyone in that, the property owners are part of the mutual, and they usually have a board. So not really our jurisdiction per se on that. It's more you to talk to them.
So to answer that question, I would say yes. So we're at the current moment, we're not in a direct partnership. So like or water organizations in the area. However, we're a young organization at a fire state council, and in the last year and a half, we've grown exponentially. And the fire state council in Ventura, fire state council, technically has been nonprofit since 2009, but mainly a dedicated group of homeowners, renters that wanted to protect, their properties, and slowly but surely with more grant funding realized that they needed to kind of expand their focus on the community. And so because of grants coming down from CAL FIRE, I think through, post Thomas Fire and all of these other fires, we've been fortunate enough to have a really good grant writer that was able to write the grants where now we have as of maybe 2 years ago, we went from a team of 2 to a team of 6 fully staffed fire state council employees. And so now that have a bigger capacity for collaborations like the Resource Conservation District and the fire department, we're open to starting more partnerships with agencies like the public works sector, as well as other, like I said, we just did a cleanup with Surfrider the other day. So other organizations, Coastal Conservancy, whoever it may be, have our doors open to try to collaborate with those, because we know that the issue isn't directly, isolated. We're not living in a silo when it comes to wildfire, because everything is interconnected, right? So
And maybe there's one thing I can add too, and this whole question, just for purposes of it's streaming or whatever, is on what's the collaboration? And I think Larry spoke to it, you've spoken to it. But one thing I will add, as having represented water purveyors for almost 40 years professionally in law practices, if you live in a mutual water company area, ask your board how your wildfire prevention system is going and what your fire pressures are, because it's incumbent upon that board. It's incumbent upon all of your water purveyors, not just your mutuals, to make sure that their systems are resilient and they have adequate fire pressure. It's an extremely important item, and they pay attention to that. But it's really incumbent upon you to ask those questions. I know there's another question, Rick.
It's kind of follow up from the same thing. So it really becomes incumbent on us to reach out to those organizations that have the quote unquote responsibility to maintain it, as opposed to why don't they have a maintenance schedule published so the communities can know when they're coming around and which, whether it be a fire hydrant or electrical line or whatever it be. So we know that it's actually happening.
And maybe that's, Larry, is that something you can speak to just briefly in terms of your procedure, and Luis? Maybe
Unfortunately, with that's something, because again, we cannot require them to do maintenance. It's their responsibility to do it. The one thing we can require, if someone's going to build a new structure or add on to their structure, we do require, as part of that building permit process, they have to get a fire clearance. Purveyor has to demonstrate that they have the proper flows and pressures at the fire hydrant serving that property. And if they don't, then we don't issue the permit for that structure. We have areas that right now can't add or build new buildings because the purveyor system hasn't been maintained. We can't require them to go do it. It's incumbent now of the property owners to get with their board and say, hey, you need to fix this so we can start utilizing our property better stuff. But it really comes down to them. And we can't control at what time we're going to be in the different neighborhoods, especially from us from an emergency service standpoint. Our first priority is answering 911 calls. And that takes priority of anything else we do. If we get an opportunity to go out and exercise hydrants, we will. It just depends on what the call loads, the different areas, and what's been happening maybe with that system and everything. But there is reports that the county has and systems that aren't certified, that there are restrictions of people building and so forth. That's one way we sort of get people to encourage their systems to get maintained.
I think we have time for. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. We're going to this gentleman first, and you're on deck. And we'll go from there. Yes.
You're talking about the Italian Cypress type, or just? Yeah. Currently, there's no requirement that mandates someone remove a live tree. There are, like, even with the new Zone 0 regs. Pardon? That's well, again, like with the new Zone 0 regulations coming out, there's going to be some requirements to trim them back from the structures, but at the distance that they're at the 15 foot in these existing communities and stuff, there are probably not going to be anything require them to do that going that far. It's mostly that 5 foot section is, that we're looking at of trimming back. Yeah, I mean, they can be hazardous, but right now there's not a mandate to go out and tell people start cutting down trees or removing, continuous canopies down. There's more information on on the regulations, both from the state and from the fire department on our website. Look at those and look through them. And if you still have some concerns, then get a hold of us and we'll do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We have time. Let's take one more question from this lady in the front.
Or is it at will? 5 and 20.
Each action will also follow by these codes.
Thank you.
All right, well, what I'd like to do at this point is, first of all, can you all join me in a round of applause for all of our speakers? Thank you very much for a wonderfully informative evening, and we're so appreciative that all of you took the time to come out because this is obviously an important discussion. It's a vital discussion relative to public safety. What we'd like to do is encourage you to stick around and ask questions of our experts one-on-one. Visit our experts who are in the back of the room. You can see all of the tables. And I think also joining us is the Red Cross here as well. I don't know if the Red Cross came. Independent Living Center. Okay, an Independent Living Center, I don't think is here, but I think everyone else is here. And I would, again, encourage you to go back and ask questions one-on-one. And again, thank you for coming and have a good evening.